Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Wednesday, December 16th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Big Ten Championship game against Northwestern is in 3 days. The College Football Playoff Selection Show is in 4 days. The game against Michigan, 346 days away. Today is early signing day. We will have a ton of coverage of that all day long at buckeyescoop.com. In case you missed it and you want to get a little preview, we did a full run through of pretty much everything you need to know for early signing day on Tuesday's Morning Scoop with Alex Gleitman. Just scroll back one day. You can listen to that at your heart's content. But today we have to talk about the College Football Playoff Committee and the final rankings release they dropped last night in the lead up to the championship weekend. And oh boy, we got some stuff to talk about. My guest is Buckeye Scoop beat reporter Tony Gerdeman. Tony, this is the 7th year of the College Football Playoff Committee deciding who gets to play for the national title. Where does this week's poll rank in terms of making everyone wonder what in the heck they are watching?
You know, it's up there. And the funny thing is nothing changes in the top 5, but everything happening below it is really, I feel like there's starting to be this groundswell of almost anger on the teleconference with the committee chairman, Gary Barta, and Bill Hancock on Tuesday night. It's Tuesday night. Some of the questions were almost angry. Like one of the people was like, what's the point of even playing the games? And that was pretty much the tone. And there are other people, asking, what does Coastal Carolina do? And why don't you guys like group of 5 teams? And what's the point of these group of 5 teams playing if there's no chance they can get to the top 10? And you're just starting to feel like, I know the 18 playoff is not in the picture right now because we've got this existing system, existing contract, but there's a lot of anger from the media time. And as we know, as long as you get that, once you get the media angry, then you can change the world. But it just feels like there's almost people are getting tired of it. And we've seen when people got tired of the BCS, there was a change. People get tired of even before that, there was a change. And it feels different now when there's just so many people raising their eyebrow, knowing that some of the things that the committee is telling them, you're like, well, I don't believe that. And that's been occurring for a long time, but it just feels like we're on the verge of maybe completely dismissing these people as anything other than hucksters.
It's interesting how when they do stuff that kind of makes you raise an eyebrow, it always seems to be in the same general direction. It's like, there's some SEC teams ranked awful high, and boy, there are some group of 5 teams ranked probably lower than you would think, and it's been very consistent over multiple years with multiple committee members. Let's just dive right into this week's rankings. Here's the top 10. Top 5, as you mentioned, unchanged: Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State in the top 4, Texas A&M in that 5th spot just outside, Iowa State is 6th, then Florida number 7. Yes, that is the same Florida that lost at home to an LSU team that had pretty much quit on the season already. Followed by Georgia at number 8, Cincinnati at number 9, Oklahoma at 10. The 2 other Big Ten teams of note for Ohio State on their resume, Indiana is 11th, Northwestern, who they will play on Saturday, is 14th. You were on the conference call with committee chairman Gary Barta tonight after that ranking show. What was the explanation for Florida falling a whopping 1 spot after losing at home to a team with a losing record?
Well, after a whole bunch of word salad from Gary Barta, it came down to the fact that Georgia was at 8, and Florida has that win over Georgia, and so the committee couldn't put Florida below Georgia. Now, Tom,
may I jump in and ask, does that mean that between 7 and 8 is now the Florida-Georgia line?
I wish you would. Please edit that out. and so the next question would be, why is Georgia at 8? And as you mentioned, they are from the SEC. And so that's why they moved up 1, because Cincinnati was off again, and they've been off for 2 weeks. They've moved down 1 spot each week. When Barta was asked, hey, man, why does Cincinnati keep getting moved down? He mentioned, well, even when teams don't play, we want teams to play because that gives us more data. But sometimes when they don't play, we can still go back and, we'll go back and rewatch a game and just make sure we know, just make sure we have all of the information we have. And if you remember, they had a tough win on the road at UCF, and UCF's not that good, and that was a close game. And so, stuff like that is also why we moved Cincinnati down a spot. Now, Tom, I will remind you, After that win over UCF, the committee thought Cincinnati was good enough to be number 7 in the poll. Now, 2 weeks later, they used that same game as a reason, as part of the reason to move them down to number 9. And it's clear to me, the biggest takeaway for me from that call was the fact that the committee can go back and just find whatever they want to justify their actions, and specifically looking for something negative to say, well, hey, Cincinnati barely beat UCF, and they would totally ignore the games like Iowa State losing to Louisiana or other faulty losses for some teams. And it's really pick and choose whatever they want. And I that's not a surprise, but some of the justification that Gary Barta kept using is we're 13 committee members. Like, so what was, if you have I'm not saying these people are idiots or not, but if you have 13 idiots, that's still a whole bunch of idiots. We're 18 idiots. That doesn't make you any better, And so I'm not saying they're idiots by any stretch, but just because you got 13 of you doesn't mean you're making the right decisions.
Yeah, it is just absolutely fascinating to watch the justification used to make the rankings, because it's very apparent and has been apparent for a number of years that they rank the teams and then it's like it's very much just eye test, because then when you look at the justifications for putting this team ahead of that team or this team ahead, the other, another team over ahead of another team, the justifications never line up. It's like, well, this team has the best quality of wins. Okay. Well, this team had a really bad loss. Okay. But they also have really quality wins. Yes, but they had a bad loss. Well, what about the other team's loss? Well, they have such good quality wins. And you go through, they had the game control year, and they have all sorts of different ways to frame it, but it sure does seem like they just, well, this team is good. We've decided this team is good, and therefore this team will not move too far. And this week, the example of that is, man, they are absolutely begging Florida to beat Alabama this weekend so they can put them in that Final Four field. I mean, I don't see that happening, but how much impact would that have on Ohio State's chances if both Alabama and Clemson or Alabama and Florida make it?
Yeah, I mean, that takes away one of those spots for sure. Well, not for sure, but the SEC champ has never been left out. A 2-loss team has made the playoffs. So, I just, the fact that they keep Florida where they did, and it feels so purposeful that you keep Georgia and move Georgia up so that Florida can only fall so far, meaning they won't have to jump them way far up if they somehow beat Alabama on Saturday. And so if that happens, then you've got to root for Notre Dame to beat Clemson just to make sure that there's no two SEC teams and two ACC teams in there. And it sounds strange for Buckeye fans, but I guess go ahead and root for Alabama. And I know you love to do that, just to avoid any sort of funny business, because if there's one thing we know about the committee, when it comes to the SEC, they love funny business. That's their favorite kind of business. And you can already see it working. I mean, they've kept Texas A&M at 5 for so long, couldn't move them below that because Florida was there at 6, and it's transparent. And then they talk to you about it. And it's like, well, it's a blank sheet of paper every single week when they do their rankings. And so the fact that it keeps showing up like this, that's just good rankings, I guess. It just shows you that we can't be biased because the rankings are the same every week.
Yes, I get the sense that if the committee does not end up they don't keep using a committee for choosing the playoff teams, this particular group of 13 may have a future in bridge sales, because if you believe they start every week with a blank sheet and no preconceived notions, friends, do I have a deal for you? They never, one of the other things that we know from the committee, they never want to talk about the future. They never want to talk about what ifs. But did you come up with any feel for what they might do if Clemson beats Notre Dame on Saturday, and then you potentially have two ACC teams in the field? Do you have any idea, or not really?
No, but the one thing they did say is that they won't they don't look at rematches as a reason to like shift rankings around in the top four. They just rank them in 1, 2, 3, 4. And if that means there's a rematch between Notre Dame and Clemson, or a rematch between Alabama and Texas A&M, that won't phase them, as that's what they say. I think everybody on the outside doesn't believe that. They would expect, well, you're going to try to avoid Alabama, Texas A&M in the first round, or Clemson, Notre Dame in the first round. But no, I didn't really get any sense in terms of what would happen. I just think a 2-loss Clemson team that doesn't have a conference title is going to be on the outside looking in, and maybe the same for Notre Dame, because if you've got Alabama, Ohio State with those conference titles, and maybe an Iowa State sneaking in there, that could be a touchy situation.
Yeah, and I want to get to this because, I mean, boy, this is the world we're living in. Iowa State is 6th and could be one win away from the college football playoff. And that's like, well, that's not the craziest thing we have to talk about today. Let's get to the rest of the crazy stuff. I mean, but first of all, this is an Ohio State podcast for a largely Ohio State audience. Is there any scenario where you think Ohio State wins the Big Ten and does not make the playoff? Does that scenario exist?
I think it does. And that's, although now with the Florida loss, that takes it way down, takes that scenario way down. I thought if Florida hadn't lost last week and they beat Alabama, those two teams are in. And I thought if Notre Dame loses closely, then it's going to be tough for the committee to choose Notre Dame over Ohio State, that those two would be tough. But now that you look at it, the 6-0 Ohio State over a 9-2 Florida, when Florida has the losses they do. Yeah, I don't want to live in a world where they would take a 2-loss team over an undefeated Ohio State team that, as I keep trying to tell people, is just trying to, they're taking the pandemic seriously. And so can we punish them for maybe being a little extra cautious, or playing in a conference that has been a little extra cautious? And it would seem to, maybe not strike the right mark in 2020 to punish a program that has taken the virus maybe more seriously than some conferences.
All right. We got to do it. Iowa State is ranked 6th. They played 10th ranked Oklahoma, and 10th ranked Oklahoma, you are completely okay to cock an eyebrow at 10th ranked Oklahoma as well, because 10th ranked Oklahoma the last 2 weeks has beaten lowly Baylor by 13 points at home, 27-14, and then not played a game at West Virginia. So 10th ranked Oklahoma has really, that's a sentence. Yes. Texas A&M is playing Tennessee this week. So Texas A&M's 5th. Tennessee's garbage. So that should not theoretically give Texas A&M a whole lot more credit. So if Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Iowa State all win, it is entirely possible, say it with me, the Iowa State Cyclones could be in the college football playoff. What on earth? It's a real testament to the absolutely terrible, terrible ranking of Florida that it took me quite a while for that to register after I looked at the rankings. Like, Iowa State could literally be one game away from the college football playoff. What the heck?
Well, you think you're saying that. Just imagine what Luke Fickell and his squad would be saying in Cincinnati. But yeah, and it is interesting to see the way, Iowa State loses early, you write them off, and then, each week they just kind of keep moving up. And because college football has been so wonky this year, there's opportunity. Like each week there are stepping stones, like just steps walking over teams that lose for no reason or didn't get to play, and then Iowa State just keeps going at 10 games. I think that's tied for the second most in the country behind the teams that have played 11, obviously. So the committee likes a large volume of games, and you know what? 2 losses, who cares? You've got 8 wins. You've played 10 games. As we know, games, the committee loves games. They love games. They're like 5-year-olds. We want more games. And they got 10 games with Iowa State, and they like it. And they're going to have an 11th this week, and that's a whole lot of data. And if they win it and Clemson loses, I know Clemson fans would be very unhappy, but they would have 2 losses and no conference title. Iowa State would have 2 losses and a conference title, both with the same record. And then Tom just watched Texas A&M sneak into that 4th spot.
If you want to watch the world revolt, put Texas A&M in ahead of a Big 12 champion Iowa State. Now, I do wonder if Iowa State loses, and then they probably do put Texas A&M in, because it would be Alabama, Notre Dame. If Clemson's out, I mean, they could very well keep Clemson in ahead of Texas A&M, which would be. I would be extremely here for everything that would be said on Twitter.com if a 2-loss Clemson gets in ahead of Texas A&M. I would be extremely amused by that. But
I think that would happen, don't you? Then it would be Notre Dame and Ohio State out in the Rose Bowl, perhaps.
Well, that's one of our next topics. But we'll I guess. I mean, it's either Alabama, Clemson, and Notre Dame, Ohio State at that point, or Alabama, Texas A&M again, if they really don't think they're going to do a rematch. It almost might depend on what the score of that ACC game is. If it's another close game, then you can probably justify it. If someone beats the other one by 2 touchdowns, 17 points, that's probably a different story. But all right, let's talk a little bit about that Rose Bowl. There's a little bit of a standoff going on right now between the state of California, the Rose Bowl, and the College Football Playoff Committee. Can you explain where all that stands right now?
Yeah, the biggest hangup right now is that California is saying no families, no fans in attendance, and so the committee, the playoffs, want the fans or the families of the players at least to be able to attend games. And right now, the Rose Bowl, California, that's just not happening, and they've made their most recent plea request to allow this to happen. Bill Hancock was asked if it would be a deal breaker if fans are not allowed, and he said a whole bunch of words and then said, I realize I'm not answering your question. And basically he said, we hope that California will let the families in, that they'll acquiesce, and then we can move forward with having this Rose Bowl. But he also said that, he's old fashioned and he believes that you follow through on the deals that you make. But then he also said that they always have a plan in place should something go awry. And he didn't mention any backup cities or anything like that, but that they would have plans if the need arises. And he said that also that they're going to wait until the last hour before they make any possible decisions on moving. They'll keep asking California, and they can wait quite a bit of time, because this is just it's just a venue that we're talking about, a place to go play a game. It's not a whole week or anything like that. And so I could, another week, 10 days before anybody knows where the game is exactly going to be. I could see that for sure.
As someone who has plane tickets booked to LAX, just in case, I would sure like to know a few days before the event where I'm going, if that is what indeed shakes out. Boy, what a time to be alive, friends. What a time to be alive. Hey, speaking of Tony and I getting in some kind of a vehicle and going somewhere, we're headed for Indianapolis this weekend for the Big Ten Championship game. That is just one of the incredible number of things going on right now at BuckeyeScoop.com. As I mentioned, today is early signing day. And during a normal year, that would be one of the busiest, craziest traffic driving days of the year. And I'm sure it will be as well today. But also, there's a Big Ten Championship game coming up in 3 days, and the College Football Playoff Selection Show coming up in 4 days. And then if Ohio State goes to a national championship semifinal, that will be in like 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks from Thursday, I believe. Boy, howdy, would this be a great time to join BuckeyeScoop.com. There is a ton of stuff going on. And we have the nice thing about working at a site with this incredible team with so many guys who have done this for so long is everyone can just stay in their lane. And the recruiting guys who have owned recruiting for 1,000,000 years will continue to own recruiting. And Tony and I, who have covered the team for 1,000,000 years, will continue to cover the team. And we don't need to worry about the recruiting stuff. We have experts for that. And the recruiting guys don't need to worry about the team stuff, because we're here for that. We'll be talking to Ryan Day later today. We'll be talking to Kerry Combs later today about the Big Ten Championship game. We're also talking to Mark Pantoni. We do not get a chance to talk to Mark Pantoni very often, Director of Player Personnel for Ohio State. That will be a really fun conversation with him. We will have a ton of coverage of that at BuckeyeScoop.com. We'll also have a bunch on Buckeye Weekly, which just has suddenly turned into a daily podcast. I don't know what we're doing with our lives, but this is 2 weeks in a row. We're just cranking them out every day. So if you want to know everything about the Buckeyes and can't wait another minute to hear something new, well, good news. We're producing new stuff pretty much every 5 minutes or so now. So you can check that all out at BuckeyeScoop.com. It'd be a great time to sign up for a membership as well. Also, check us out on all your podcast platforms of choice. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all of our podcasts, or you can just search Buckeye Weekly to find the one that Tony and I do specifically. But whatever you search, please subscribe right there. Also, leave us a 5-star rating and review, which will help new folks find those shows as well. We will be in Indianapolis on Friday night. We'll probably have a little something fun for our BuckeyeScoops.com subscribers Friday night. Then we'll have a pregame show Saturday at Lucas Oil Stadium, and then cover the game, and then have a postgame show after the game. And man, I am tired already. It is going to be quite a week. It is going to be quite a week, friends. And then there's a college football playoff selection show on Sunday. My goodness. Make sure you check it all out at BuckeyeScoop.com. Thank you guys for joining us. Have a great day. I might go take a nap right now. We'll talk to you later.